On today's Question of Faith, why are Gen Z women leaving the church? Hey everybody, this is Question of Faith. I am Deacon Mike Hayes. I'm the Young Adult Ministry Director here at the Diocese of Cleveland.
And I'm Father Damian Ferentz, the Vicar for Evangelization.
And we have two guests today.
Kate Feliciano.
And Natalie Patrick.
And they're both from Walsh Jesuit High School, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Kate, do you want to tell us your parish?
Yeah, I'm from Holy Family in Stowe and St. Mary's of Hudson.
And Natalie?
I'm from St. John Newman in Strongsville.
And I know both of these ladies who are Gen Z women from Tolle Lege, which is a little institute I run out at the seminary in the summer, the last 2 weeks of June for rising seniors. We study philosophy, theology, culture, and liturgy. And so I spent a week with both of these ladies and some of their other friends. So a shout out to all our Tolle Lege friends who might be listening.
So you've got a lot of research this week.
I have, and
Nerd.
I obviously spend a good amount of time with Gen Z women who are young adults, and you're the director of Young Adult Ministry. And one of the things that I've come to know in the last few months is that there's a most recent study that their generation, so they're not millennials, their generation is born between 1996 and 2012, and it's the first generation where women are leaving the church at a faster rate than men.
Yeah.
With millennials, men, Gen X, which is what we are, men, baby boomers, same, but the women have always been pretty steady. And so this should be some cause for alarm. So what we want to do today is talk a little bit about why Gen Z women are leaving the church, and we also want to hear why you stay, because you guys are both pretty faithful. So,
And I found this to be, so first of all, we're talking about all Christians, not necessarily
not
all
just
Catholics.
Yep.
Right? But then secondly, it's like, so when I started doing young adult ministry, we always had trouble finding men. Right, it was and healthy men on top of that, you know. And then when I went to campus ministry, it was the same thing. We had plenty of women around, very few men. Every once in a while, we'd get a couple folks coming in, but we struggled. We had a great campus minister who did a lot of stuff with the athletes, and that's where we got a lot of our guys. But we really struggled to attract men, and now it seems to be the reverse. I do a lot of work in young adult ministry, and that's this age, right? Whole bunch of guys, like a Catching Fire, Grapevine, overrun by men, but now they're struggling to find women. So I really resonate with this. I was at a young adult event 2 weeks ago. I want to say it was maybe 80% men. So interesting. That's interesting. Yeah. So what has your experience been? Have you had friends who have left the church, female friends, and if they have they voiced why?
I think specifically for me, a lot of my friends have left the institute of the church, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're leaving God, which I think is a distinction that needs to be made, is that while these women may be leaving organized religion, they aren't completely turned off to the view of God and to the idea that God still wants a deep and personal relationship. And I think talking to a few of my friends, I've seen more of an issue with the institute of the church and a lot of things that go on in the church that is more they find fault in than the being of God.
Do they talk about anything specific?
I heard a lot of just it's a male-dominated religion, and I think that in today's society where women are told to be independent and that they don't need a man, that's scary, and that's something that they have been just culturally pushed away from. So I think it's a huge societal thing.
Kate?
Yeah, and playing off of that, I also think that looking at the idea of a relationship with men, with God, with whether that be fathers, brothers, boys at school, things like that, you definitely see that those relationships are struggling, which also causes a lot of people to, when they go to church and they see their priest, they kind of tend to be a little bit more closed off, tend to want to hold back a little bit. And you see a lot of women, like Natalie said, leaving the institute of the church but not turning away from God, rather kind of taking that time. I have some friends who don't feel very comfortable in Mass but will go and spend hours in adoration or hours in prayer because they desire that relationship with God, and they really want to still be one with Him. They just tend to kind of struggle to find that community within their church life.
Yeah, right. Do they have a similar relationship with other women that are religious? Like, do they hang out with other women and talk about God stuff, and just like push the men aside, or is it something different?
I think I've definitely noticed from having 2 very strong life team communities as well as a community at Walsh, a lot of women just tend to be like, either they don't associate with, sometimes they don't associate with men as much because they don't want it to become a distraction in their faith. They don't want it to become something that they rely on in their faith. Whereas they also tend to see it as more of, they don't want to have to kind of revolve their life, seem like they're revolving their life around men.
Got it.
Yeah, I would also say with men specifically, are like the way they're viewed, at least in school, and men seem to bring politics a lot into religion.
That's
and
true.
I think that's really, I feel like women are better at leading with emotion. Like, we are very emotional people, and that's easier to have those conversations about deeper things with, and it can be scary to be vulnerable to a man when faith is so personal and such a vulnerable space in our lives.
That's true. We tend to argue about things, right?
Yeah. I'm wondering, the one thing you said was that you're raised in a society and women are taught that they don't need men. And I wonder if there's something false or erroneous there, because as a man, I need women. Like, I love the fact that I have you as my friends. If I didn't have good women in my life, I would be in deep, deep trouble. My mom's deceased now, but I love thinking of the church as female, as mother and teacher. I think that women at their best bring out the best in me. And I wonder, like, I understand about being independent and not totally reliant or dependent upon, but what would you say to, like, men in themselves aren't bad, and we're created in God's image and likeness, male and female, he created them. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that the feminist movement is such pitting men against women, and I think that's so counter of what everything the church says. Like, men have certain qualities that women need, and women have certain qualities that men need, and the ability for us to coexist. And there's things that me and Kate get out of our friendship that I need and are good, but there are also things that male friendships provide and that are also so good. But I think the feminist movement right now is so set on, we need to be the same. And I think rather than glorifying our differences and finding the beauty in femininity and the beauty of what makes a woman feminine is so beautiful, and when we've kind of lost that as a society, as our standard of beauty has changed, and we're just pitted against men. And I think that really hurts. We see that in the church, and I think it hurts that too.
Yeah, and we tend a lot to just kind of, like she says, pit ourselves against one another, but also compare it as, well, if this person's doing this, then I also need to be doing this. When we're all created for our own vocation, we're all created for our own way of life, and we just have to come to that sense that, Natalie and I are going to have 2 very different futures. I want to go into education, sports, things like that, whereas Natalie's looking more into the health and departments like that, because we're both created in that way that we want to follow our way. And I think that a lot of people think that when you look at the men sometimes in the church, you tend to think, okay, well, if this person's doing this, I need to try and be at the same level as that. I need to try and so it's a continuous competition, and that's not just between men and women, that's also between women, women alone. I know a big thing as seniors in high school, it's applying to schools, how much money can you get for scholarships, things like that people really kind of it almost everything turns into a bit of a competition, which coming from somebody who's very competitive, that can be so hard to not completely revolve your life around. And I think that also just kind of ends up falling into the church, where you feel every time you show up, you're competing with somebody to, whether it's competing with them to look holier than them, or be oh, well, I sinned less than you this week, and things like that. And I think that that's become a problem that we kind of tend to fall into a lot.
Virtue signaling kind of stuff, right? Yeah. I mean, what role do you think social media plays in all this, in terms of competition and, looking good? And
social media is one of my least favorite things, but also something that I love so much. I know Natalie and I both haven't been on TikTok for a really long time, so that's been healthy for us just to kind of get away from. But things such as like Instagram, where it's just consistently, you see things on your feed and you're comparing things. I know, like, I'm a photographer for sports teams. I see other photographers and I immediately start comparing myself to them. And so I think that, like, that's another thing that's also just added another level of it is what, and then if you do choose, like, I had a period in my life where I went completely off social media and I immediately felt out of it. I felt like I didn't know what was going on in the world.
Wow.
I felt like I literally had no idea what was going on, because that's where I realized I got all my news from there. I got to see what my friends were doing. But I also noticed such a difference in, like, my self-image. I was able to look at myself in the mirror and be like, wow, I truly am, like, perfectly created in the image of God, and things like that, where when I'm on social media, I can't see that as much.
Yeah, you're just comparing then, right? Yeah. That's interesting. And so it's interesting how the fast had the opposite effect there, right? Like, you would think that purging yourself of it would, instead it ends up being FOMO,
Yeah. I'm preparing for Lent, and I've decided to give up Instagram and X for the entirety of Lent. Wow. I've never done that before. I usually give up drinking, so I'm going to give up drinking and dark chocolate and social media. It's the trifecta. I was debating between the three, and then I just felt like the Lord's like, go for it. Go for all three. I'm like, okay, whatever. I'll do it. We'll see how it goes.
Don't sound so excited.
It's one of those things where you do it, and then when you're done doing it, you're so grateful. But at this point, I'm not grateful. Yeah. So, well, tell us a little bit about what, I've got a lot of articles here. We could link some things to the show notes, because there's a lot of reasons. And I think the political thing's a big one that you mentioned. The patriarchy business. When you think of church, you think, okay, it's God the Father, Jesus the Son, and sometimes if relationships with men haven't been great, then you could bring that in. So there's a lot there to cover. But how about, why do you stay?
Yeah.
Because you're both really active, both at Walsh and in your parishes, and you went to CLE 216. You love being Catholic, so tell us a little bit about why you stay Catholic.
Yeah, what are some meaningful experiences you've had? Yeah.
Me and Kate have different experiences on this. I grew up very much Catholic, like, through my whole life. I struggled in my faith, but it was never a complete, like, separation from the church at all. And I think the reason I continue to pursue God and to seek that relationship and seek the community that is found in the church is there's so much beauty found in the church. And I think specifically as a woman, our beauty is so under attack right now, and all the beautiful things that we love about being a girl, like there was a trend on TikTok a while ago, like, I love being a girl, and like it would list all the reasons like why, and like so many of those reasons of like, oh, getting ready before homecoming and like becoming beautiful, putting on a fancy dress, like all those things I think speak into the deeper truth of what women long for. And like we just long to feel beautiful and feel a connection, and I think like that all to me points back to the Eucharist and the beauty of the sacrament and the beauty that is the Mass. And I think like my favorite Masses are the ones where it's like the Easter Vigil, like there's incense and it's just very reverent, and like you truly like you feel Jesus is present there. Not to say that he's any less present in other Masses, but the unique beauty in that, I think as a woman specifically, is what we long for. We long to feel beautiful, and we long to feel loved, and I think that the love that we long for can only be found in God.
Yeah, and so for me, I grew up in a family that was not very religious, did not attend Sunday Mass most of my childhood, and I think that created like a big kind of empty space in my heart. It actually was just about a year ago, a couple weeks ago, that I had my full reversion back into the faith. I attended a retreat from Walsh called Kairos, and I got to sit in adoration for an hour and a half, 2 hours close to. And I honestly sat there and just sobbed. I'd never really sat in front of the Eucharist before, unless it was like a religion class assignment or something like that. I never really went out of my way to do that. And I got to sit in front of the Eucharist and just completely collapsed. I got to be so close. I was sitting right in the front. I just was able to experience Jesus in his full glory. And ever since that day, I decided that I wanted to turn my life around. I had struggled with a lot of things prior to that experience, between unhealthy relationships within my family. And I just kind of struggled to see myself as a person other than just somebody's girlfriend or somebody's little sister or whatever it was. And when I had that reversion back into the faith, the first thing that always sticks with me is just being able to like go to confession. Confession, honestly, I think is what completely saved me. Being able to sit down with a priest, and I didn't honestly feel that true confession until June, when I went on Totally Legge. I got to meet an amazing priest who I now do almost all of my confessions with. And I just was able to see, like, there is somebody there that God completely placed into my life. That is God sitting in front of me, that I am getting to talk to and hear from. And honestly, that's just made me want to stay and want to keep coming back. And then I go and I sit in Mass, and I'm not going to lie, I have my days where sometimes Mass just, it's like, all right, I have to go. But then I get there and I receive the Eucharist and I see the beauty around me, whether that's the little kids running up to your pew or the sweet old grandma sitting in the front row, whoever it is, getting to see like the beauty of the church makes it 1,000 times easier just to be there and want to go every single day and receive Jesus and, you know, come to that love so much deeper.
Kate, I'm curious, on that retreat that you went on where you said you sat in front of the Eucharist, you know, I always say it's people talk about the profound experiences they have in those situations, but it takes something to get people there. You know, what got you to actually take the step to go to spend some time with Jesus in the Eucharist?
So that retreat was not one I wanted to go on. Prior to that, I completely renounced God. I renounced the church as a whole. And my oldest, I only have one brother. My older brother was a leader on this retreat. And we kind of went back and forth of, I don't know if I really want you going on this retreat because I'm leading it and that might throw it off. And then I was like, I don't really know if I even want to go. And it wasn't until about the week prior that finally I was like, okay, fine, maybe I'll just give it a try. I don't really know what this whole Jesus thing is, but, you know, maybe it could be cool. And then, spoiler alert to anybody who hasn't gone on Kairos yet, they give you that opportunity where they don't really tell you what you're going to do. They tell you, hey, like, the monstrance is going to be out. You're going to see the Eucharist. But they kind of just let you, you know, guide it on your own. Let you see it how you want to. And it took me about 15 minutes to kind of be like, okay, is this whole thing, like, is everybody, like, fake crying around me? Or, like, what's really happening? And then once I started to realize that it all hit me at once. And I just started crying, and I realized how much, like, that was the Spirit moving me. And then from then, it's like you don't even realize how much adoration is going on. I mean, I am blessed that my church, Holy Family, has a 24-hour adoration that, I mean, I have gone in there at 2 a.m. because I couldn't sleep sometimes, or sometimes I just really need to talk to Jesus, or I'm not, as much as I love confession and I do think it's a great sacrament, sometimes I just get really nervous, so I'm like, I need to go sit directly in front of Jesus for a little while before I do. And so I think that, like, being placed there, and now I get to take that opportunity to go into adoration, it, like, has made it such a different opportunity. And I don't feel that feeling of consolation every single time.
Sure, yeah.
Which is how it's going to be. But knowing that, like, thinking back to that situation on Kairos when I did feel that, and being like, I strive to feel that every single day, has helped me like grow in my faith so much.
If I had a dime for every time someone said, I didn't think I wanted to go on Kairos, but then I went. And then
Yep. Can I ask if you could talk just briefly about what you liked, or what was a benefit of being part of Tole Lege? Because that's where we met, and I know that a lot of the things you talked about may have been present there. So if you could just chat, especially if there's a rising senior who's thinking of applying, what would be something that might be a draw?
I think being in an environment where everyone wanted to be there and everyone was there for the same reason, to deepen their faith. I feel like even Kairos a little bit, it is such a beautiful and great experience, but it's also like you're pressured to go a little bit, at least at our school. So it's sometimes you get some of the people who aren't fully in it, just maybe for like the social aspect of, which is beautiful, growing closer to your peers. But I think Tole Lege allowed me to deepen my faith in a way that was like through education. And I think I am if you know me, I'm very science, very math. Like I like my education's very important to me. So bringing that into my faith in a new way that wasn't just Catholic school or like the normal teaching, and like actually like being able to read about like philosophy and all these beautiful like doctrines and things that we learned about, like allowed me to understand my faith better, which in turn brought me closer to God. And I think also the friendships and just the community that's built there is beautiful, and we still talk to everyone today.
Yeah, our group chat is always texting still. But yeah, Tole was my first opportunity after Kairos that I was like, I'm gonna start saying yes to every opportunity that I get to grow my faith. And being somebody who had been so distant from the church for such a long time, when I sat in religion classes at school, I didn't really listen and things like that. So taking that week out of my life, out of my busy schedule, getting away from lacrosse, getting away from everything else that was going on, and fully committing to it, that same idea of everybody who was on Tole wanted to be there. Was there maybe a kid or two that like everybody else in their family went, so they went? Yes, but at the end of the day, like when you came to the end of the week, that person wanted to be there. And I think that's what made it such a big difference, was that I was very hesitant. I went without knowing anybody. Natalie and I knew each other, but I didn't know she was going on it until I had got there. And I ended up completely falling in love with every single person there. Still to this day, I see Natalie every single day. I see most of the people there at least once a month. So it's been such a blessing to like have that community. And those are also people that, you text in our group chat at any time and somebody will respond, no matter what it is. We text about some of the weirdest things. But no matter what, you always have somebody. And also it's been such a strong thing for my faith, because I see these other kids who, we all came from different areas. Some of us had been homeschooled for our whole entire lives. Some of us did public school for our whole life, whatever it was. But you see these kids who you're like, wow, that person's so deep in their faith. And they send a text in the group chat and they're like, hey, does anybody know what this means? Or can somebody explain this to me? And you will get people who fully go in depth explaining it in words that like us as teenagers are going to understand.
Yeah.
Sounds like Trinity or something.
It's very much Trinity, Blake, those.
Yeah, I feel like nobody wanted to leave at the end of the week either.
Yeah.
We're all like, and then when the reunion got canceled, everyone was so sad.
We were so sad.
Well, there'll be more reunions. The other thing I was going to say, although you guys drove her nuts a little bit, usually the second week is the wild week, but this first week was the wild week. Dr. Beth Rath also teaches there. And for a lot of the men too, but to see a young woman, PhD in philosophy, is I think very impactful for a rising senior to say, my gosh, this is pretty incredible. And I know that some of our women have gone on at least to minor, if not major, in philosophy because of their experience with Dr. Rath at the SM. So if I could just sum this up, because these were some things I was thinking of, things that are unattractive, the institutional aspect and the political aspect. And it's interesting because we've studied this with Francine. Your generation as a whole is suspicious of institutions,
Sure,
and maybe
yeah.
the women even more than the men.
Much like ours.
But
Yeah.
that's true of like banks, and that's true of big box stores and
Right.
all those things. So the church is one institution among many, but there's some other issues there too. And again, we'll put some links in. But the things that drew you said beauty, the relational aspect, relationship with God, relationship with others, the sacramental life, Eucharist, confession, prayer life, spirituality. So if we're trying to reach out to young women, it'd probably be best to lean into the beauty, the relational aspect, the sacramental aspect, prayer, all those things would be helpful. Yeah? Does that sound right?
Yeah.
We're learning from you, so I'm asking.
I think like more of an importance on prayer. Like for some people, like the institution is just going to turn them away. So like saying that's okay, but like still having that deep prayer life and a deep spiritual connection with God is so important. And I think if it starts with that, then that will lead them back to the church eventually.
That's smart. Good.
One last question from me. What's one thing that you think older people don't know about your generation that they should know, or that they don't understand about your generation, maybe?
I think something that you see a lot from the older generation is that the people who are showing up to church, the people who want to create that relationship with God, we're not all going to look the same. So
Sure.
I think something that I definitely struggled with a lot coming into the church was, my dresses are usually above my knee, or, every once in a while, like, I'll wear like a smaller shirt to church, things like that. And I think that something that I've experienced from the older community is that leads to a lot of judgment. That leads to a lot of, okay, well, you're not actually practicing your faith because you don't look like you are. So I think that's also something that scares people a little bit, is that like, oh, I'm scared to wear the wrong thing. I'm scared to wear this. Or just in general, I'm scared to be judged.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So I think that's a big fear. Even like you even see that in high school and stuff. Like people, it's just a big judgment aspect that people are scared of.
Notre Dame did a longitudinal study about this. This is going back now too. About 30 years now. That's one of the biggest things that all generations have. That they say that there's a judgmental attitude amongst religious people in general that turns them off immediately, especially when they're found to be hypocrites. And the same thing.
Natalie?
I think that like just as our generation as a whole, we're seen as more ignorant, and that like just because we're younger, we aren't as smart to like certain things. And I think like we're just looked down upon, like, oh, you don't understand this, like, or that I'm trying to think of the right word, our faults come from ignorance. And I think that we're a lot smarter than you, like the older generation may think that
Yes,
we
you
are.
are.
And we have so many more resources available to us, and we are very well educated, and our curiosity, like sometimes our curiosity comes off as, oh, the institution might not be right for me right now, or oh, this, I'm like really struggling with this, just because we are so curious and we want to learn. And I think that curiosity can lead to a lot of like head-on like collisions between things, and I don't think the curiosity is bad. And I think if the older generation wants to connect with us more, like share your experience. What knowledge do you have, instead of looking down on us? It's like a mutual thing where we both have different experiences that are equally as valuable, and we can learn from each other rather than we can just learn from you.
One of my all-time favorite students, Ryan Underkoffer, who just called me the other day, he said that one of the things that I have to teach him is life experience, right? The different experiences I've had and what I've learned from them. And he said, but if you tell me about like a TV show or a movie or a book, he goes, I'm going to go home and I'm going to look at this on Google, and by the end of the day, I'll know more about it than you will. And I was like, not wrong. And so, you both have talked a little bit about your parish, but I think, Natalie, maybe you didn't talk a little bit about John Newman. Can you tell me a little bit about your parish there?
I really love St. John Newman. I think the leadership that we have in Father Barry, he's been there for a while, and the wisdom that he imparts is really beautiful. And then I also think that our Life Teen community is it's growing, and it's just such a warm and welcoming environment. So if anyone lives near Strongsville, Sunday nights, 5 p.m., come to Life Teen Mass.
I heard you had a really crappy speaker, though, this week.
Yeah, last weekend, some guy named
kind of
Father
disappointing.
Damien.
Very disappointing.
He's the worst.
No, it was great. It was a really, really good time.
Oh, thanks.
I
Thank you.
appreciate
It was good to see you guys.
Yeah, and just the community that provides, even finding other people that are as deep in their faith. And I think that St. John Newman does a really good job of being in the community as well, and not just sitting as a standalone church, but helping those around us as well.
Sure.
That's cool.
Hey, this podcast is brought to you by Briefcase Marketing. So our sponsor, Briefcase Marketing. Hey, do you guys know what Briefcase Marketing does?
I do not.
Ooh, okay.
Let me tell you. Briefcase Marketing creates marketing for your church or your church-based ministry that inspires action and delivers results.
They make sure that you don't have scattered messaging or a bad website. They'll clarify your message to attract the right audience. They'll streamline your website. That will convert visitors into customers, donors, volunteers, parishioners. They'll create consistency to build trust and deepen relationships across all of your marketing platforms. That's your emails, your ads, your social media, all that jazz.
Now, Kate and Natalie, you may say, FD, I need proof. I'm a scientific-minded woman. I need evidence. Well, Briefcase Marketing gets great Google reviews. They've done superb work with our friends at Theology of the Body Cleveland and St. John Cancius Parish in Tremont. We'll even put samples of that work in our show notes to make it easy for you to check them out.
A clear message, a compelling website, Briefcase Marketing will help you get those things, and that'll bring more donors giving to your mission, more volunteers ready to serve you, more people sharing your message. That becomes their advocates for you.
So visit their website. That's briefcase.marketing. We've got their link in the show notes, or text 308-627-1262. And our pal, Dan First, will take good care of you at Briefcase Marketing.
All right, 8th Sunday in Ordinary Time coming up this weekend. Gospel is Luke's Gospel. What I liked in this one this week is a good person out of the store of goodness in his heart produces good, but an evil person out of a store of evil produces evil. I think the word store in that sentence is the key one. What do you store up? Do you store up goodness, or do you store up hatred, right? And, if you store that up, that's what you're going to give back. That's what you have to give. So store more goodness than hatred.
I was visiting a couple of my friends on Friday in Steubenville. Brittany Buchanan, who's a former Tolly Legge girl, and Anna Marino, and they both have been doing pottery recently.
Interesting.
And so I was drawn to the first reading as the test of what the potter molds is in the furnace. So in tribulation is the test of the just. So when you put your clay into the kiln, if it's not right, it'll crack and break apart. So you learn someone's character when the heat is on. And that's when one's character is revealed. And I like that, especially since I have friends who are now at the potter's wheel on a regular basis.
The part that stuck out to me was, for every tree is known by its own fruit. And it made me think about, what fruit am I producing? And what does it say about who I am as a person? So I think it just brought in a lot of self-reflection of, what you are putting out there. The words you speak become the house that you live in, and all those things that you are acting that speaks a lot to your character. So
yeah, very good.
Fruit.
Yeah.
That line also had stuck out to me earlier when I had read it, and I think it also plays into what we were talking about earlier with everybody is made for their own vocation, and every tree is going to be different. Even if there's a line of apple trees, not a single apple on those trees is going to look the same. So understanding that every one of us is made to bear our own fruit and make it beautiful and flourish it on our own.
Very nice. All right, so Kate, Natalie, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah,
Thank you for having us.
You have blessed us with your beauty, intelligence, and feminine genius, and we're grateful.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Amen. This has been Question of Faith. I am Deacon Mike Hayes.
And I'm Father Damien Ferentz.
And we'll see you all again next time.